I'm ready.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm Richard Sprague. I call myself a personal scientist, and I guess that's kind of a weird way of saying that I've done a lot of things in my life. I started my life as a techie, worked in various different engineering and product groups at Microsoft for many years, and then and then Apple before that, and a bunch of startups. The last 10 years, I've mostly been interested in health tech, which is taking all the cool new technology that's out there, like wearables and new diagnostics and whatever, and seeing how you can improve human health and performance. And so now I do a lot of work with startups, mostly startups related to health tech in one way or another. And along the way, I get to play with lots of different devices and lots of different cool stuff. And I'm happy to talk to you about that today.
Yeah, I'm super interested in all the wearables and everything. I think it's kind of the next thing, and it's been a thing, but now it's just getting bigger and bigger as a marketplace. And what people have access to is changing so fast. What kind of led to your interest at first in personal science and in all this testing?
Well, I've always been interested in computers, and mostly from a point of view of software. And the natural thing to think if you spend a lot of time in software is, if I want to protect my health, or if I want to do something, to improve myself, um, I know how to fix the software, because the software is just, the words that I use, the books I read, that sort of stuff. But how can I fix the hardware? And my human body is made up of DNA and cells and organs, and there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to be able to fix. But how do I do that? Well, so like I was also thinking, well, maybe I could learn more about how biology works, and maybe I could start treating the body a little bit more like a machine. And now, of course, that's super complicated, and that's going to take forever before science figures that out. But along the way, every day somebody's coming out with some new device that you can strap on, and you can learn more about yourself that way. And so, I don't know, starting like about 10 or maybe a little bit more than that years ago, there was a movement that kind of got kicked off from a Wired magazine article about, and we call it the quantified self. And it's a lot of other people who, it turns out, like to track themselves and like to, compare notes on that. So I've just been interested in it ever since.
It's crazy how far it's come, right? In that time, there's just more and more, and there's so many people that are interested now. Do you think it was a smaller group of people when you first started being interested in like biology and testing than there is now? Do you think it's grown?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny. Um, I would say that there was probably a lot of naive excitement 10 years
Hmm.
ago that didn't exist as much. That doesn't exist as much today. A lot of people were hoping that being able to strap on a wearable and running a few numbers on that would just like transform medicine and transform all the ways that we think about things. It turned out that was a lot more complicated. Although, that said, a lot of people got rich off of it. Some of the early products that we were using in the quantified self, things like Fitbit, or various different sleep tracking devices, whatever. A lot of them ended up becoming really successful products that all of us are using right now. And of course, something like the Apple Watch, a lot of people have it, and it's got a lot of the same, tracking technology that people just dreamed about when I got started.
Yeah, it's cool to see where it's all going and how it progresses. Do you think that testing is important for everyone, or do you think it's more of just for people that are super interested in biology or kind of more on like the techie side?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I guess some people are more naturally like interested in this kind of stuff, and of course,
Hmm.
those people say the way that I would sell it though to somebody who is just getting started or is trying to think about it is, let's say that you're trying to buy a house, and somebody told you what the average price is for a house worldwide. That doesn't really tell you anything. Like, who
Yeah.
cares what the average price of a house worldwide is? It doesn't make any difference to the house that you're going to buy. And then let's say somebody else tells you, well, here's the average price of a house in the United States. Okay, if you live in the United States, that's getting a little bit more useful, but it's pretty useless from your point of view. What you really care about is the average price of the house of the kind that you want, like the size and the and certainly the location and and all those sorts of things. That's what you care about. Well, people understand that intuitively when you're talking about buying a house, but if you're talking about your health, people immediately just want to go read the latest article they read someplace that says that such and such food is good for you, or such and such activity is bad for you. Well, like those are general guidelines that are kind of similar to knowing what the price of a house is worldwide. What you really care about is what is the response, or what is like how does this affect somebody of your age, your sex, your lifestyle habits, and all those sorts of things. And that's where tracking really shines, because what you want to do is find a little bit more precise about what all these things mean to you, and then and rely a little bit less on the averages that you read typically when you read about this kind of stuff.
I think that's so true because I'm in the nutrition field. I have been interested in nutrition for a
Hmm.
super long time, but what I didn't know until I went to college actually was how few of these experiments and studies are done on women, on different age
Yeah,
groups, how
exactly,
accurate some of them
exactly.
are.
Yeah. Hmm. Yep.
It's not as accurate, and the generalization is huge comparatively to what I thought it was.
Yep. Yep.
And so much of it just isn't applicable to what's applicable to me won't be applicable to you or to someone that's, living somewhere different or even just like a slightly different genetic background. So it's
Exactly,
crazy
exactly.
how
And
much people take it into account.
yeah, it is crazy. And I was talking to somebody the other day. It was an older man who was complaining because he had come down with COVID, and he
Mhm.
was on some kind of kidney medication that was like having all these terrible side effects and whatever. And I asked him sort of like, why did you, like why are you taking this medicine, and blah blah blah. And it turned out that he was taking some kind of kidney medication that his doctor had recommended for him, but no studies had ever been done on men over age 65. He's in his 90s, and he was relying every like on the on and he was like taking this along with some COVID medication, and in combination with other drugs. Nobody has ever tested that ever in that combination on him. And here he is complaining about side effects and complaining that it doesn't work. Well, of course, like what do you expect? Like nobody, you are the first time anybody has ever tried this combination. And I think that just in general, a lot of people appreciate this, but it's something you can take into your own hands. Is that in general, people need to look at themselves as being responsible for their own health and rely a little bit less on studies and even on credentialed experts, because the only person the person who cares the most about your health is like you and your loved ones. And however well-meaning a doctor is, or however well-meaning some scientist who wrote a lab paper or an article that you read, no matter how well-meaning they are, nobody is going to care as much as you do. And so I just think a lot of what we call personal science is about taking that to heart and trying to live your life a little bit more deliberately, and thinking a little bit more about what the consequences are to you, and less in terms of like populations.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And also just the fact that doctors just don't have as much time. You're spending all this time in your body every single day. You know yourself, you know your activities,
Yeah,
you know what you're eating. The doctor only knows what you tell them for the 30 minutes
yeah,
that you're in
exactly.
that
Yeah,
room. And they also have so many people to see. And a lot of times,
yeah.
if it's
Mhm.
not an immediate need and it's more of a chronic ongoing thing, they just don't know you as well as you know you, and they don't have the
That's
time.
right. Yeah, that's right. And
Is
also
there any?
a lot of you'd be surprised, and now that I'm aware of this, I look at this. Every single academic study that I read is like this. But you'd be surprised how many things that like doctors take for granted, based on some data set or some publication or whatever that was done years ago in people completely different from you. And so,
Mhm.
for example, like one is when they're trying to tell like what is the average height, or what is a quote unquote normal height for babies or toddlers. They're basing it on some study that was done in Ohio in the 1950s, on kids that are totally different than what kids are likely to be today. And and that just goes down the, I mean, go down the list of all the different kinds of things that you think would be like well understood. Even something like body temperature. We all know that it's 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 Fahrenheit. But it turns out that like when people have done like much more massive studies about this, that's not what it is at all. And there's a lot of variation. And even like with temperature, you probably know that if you measured your temperature first thing in the morning, it's going to be different than it was in the afternoon or before you go to bed. It's going to be different depending on whether you had exercise or not. A lot of things can affect this stuff. And the same thing goes for when you go on an annual checkup with your doctor and your doctor checks your blood pressure or your heart rate. I mean, come on. That's like, a 5 minute period of your year that is could be completely different than if they had just measured you, an hour or two later. And like the blood test that people usually get along with a physical, there again, the results that you're going to get from that blood test can be just very different depending on the time of day, depending on what you were going through the previous week. And a lot of people just take that stuff way too seriously when what you really ought to be doing is being a little bit more mindful of what your what your overall health should be, or the special circumstances that make you you. And I just enjoy studying that sort of thing, and I think more people could benefit from having a little bit more of a personalized perspective on those sorts of things.
Yeah, I've been shocked before because I've done testing over the years. My parents started me doing blood testing when I was like
Mm-hmm.
19, which is pretty unusual. They did all the panels. They're super into biohacking. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost 24 now. So I've done blood panels every year since I was 19
Mm-hmm.
on all my hormones and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of different things. And I've been shocked by how variable it's been year to year. And then also, I traveled for a while and then I came back and did them. So I had like
Oh
six
yeah,
months
yeah.
difference.
Mm-hmm.
Very different.
Yeah, can I
Very
ask you,
different
so
on
like
where you're
and
at.
when you do blood testing, how do you do it? Do you like go through Quest
So
Labs, or
we
do you have a
we do it through
special?
Quest.
Yep.
We do it through
Okay.
Quest. I have since I was pretty young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the panels I've done have changed throughout the years as I've gotten older. There are things now that I'm interested in
Yeah.
biohacking
Mm-hmm.
myself that I'm like, oh, I actually want this test specifically.
Oh,
But when I
great.
was
Okay.
younger, it was more like general panels. But it
Mm-hmm.
is just very interesting how things change, like you said, day to day, week to week, year to year, especially. Um, no matter your age, no matter who you are, things change.
Yeah, the so a lot of us quantified self types like to push the envelope of what kind of things you get out of a blood test. And a couple of years ago, some friends of mine put together this study. It's actually been published that they got a hold of a cholesterol measuring device, like one that will give you instant results. And
Mm-hmm.
they I think it was like a couple dozen people, I think, that they decided to measure their cholesterol levels at different times of the day, throughout a week. So they had, lots of dozens and dozens and dozens of measurements. And what they found out was that not only does, the variability of, blood cholesterol levels, it just like swings wildly throughout the day, and, depending on what you ate and a whole bunch of other things, but also it swings enough that every single person in this that who did this found out that there were some times during the day when they were quote unquote normal levels, and other times of the day when they were something out of, either like too high or too low, or something about their levels was something that would get red flagged if a doctor saw it. And it just really makes you wonder how much we can trust doing a blood test at one point in time, because there's just so much variability. And it's part of the reason why I've been really interested in, it's now becoming possible to get the kind of blood test that you can take at home, and that you can you
Mm-hmm.
test yourself regularly throughout the day. And I think that's going to just upend a whole bunch of knowledge that people have about what they think is going on in their body and what's actually going on.
The home
And
tests are really interesting, and I wish that I was a little bit less of a baby. It's just the blood draw for me.
uh-huh,
I've actually gone and ordered tests before that are blood draw ones, and I'm like, oh, I just can't stomach it at home. But
uh-huh.
that's why I go into the lab. But I know so many people that love the at-home tests, and
Yeah,
I'm seeing more and more people using them.
yeah, that's interesting you say that. So you've seen the at-home ones, like there's the kind that you just take, they give this like little pincher thing and you just slap it on your arm. You wait 5 minutes and then you're done. And do you
I
think people
haven't
are
seen those yet.
okay? Okay,
I've seen
that
the
that's like
finger prick ones.
Yeah, the finger prick one. Some people don't like the needle part of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh. And I think that new technologies are coming out that make it less and less invasive. I obviously
Yeah.
so continuous glucose monitoring is a big one where a lot of people when they first hear about a CGM, they're like, ew, needles. But if you once you try it, you realize it's not really that bad. It's like not really even I wouldn't even call it a pinprick. It's more like a scratch.
Yeah.
and uh
It's
and
so it's so minor.
yeah, and people are, and like new technologies are coming out so that they're talking about having it be incorporated maybe in an Apple Watch at some point, or
Hmm.
ways to be able to just completely non-invasively find out what is going on in your blood, just by looking at like changes in the color of your skin, or by shining a light that has the right frequency that can go through the skin, that sort of stuff. And so you're going to start to see, I think, a lot of these testing become less and less invasive, a lot easier over time. And then I think it's just going to blow the doors off of what people know about themselves, and a lot of the kind of conventional wisdom that we take for granted about what is a normal level of this or that hormone or metabolite. People are going to realize that, well, it all depends.
All of it. And it's a wide range typically for all these things. Like it's a
Yeah.
really wide range. Do you think that like are you saying with this new technology typically it's going to be AI, or is it more just other tech that you're seeing being like the
Well, there's all
future
kinds
of
of things. So,
testing?
like one of the companies that I've been working with has the people who are behind this blood test have expertise in photoelectronics, and
Okay.
um, when you want to find out what kind of a metabolite is in your body, physicists have known for zillions of years how you can use like special properties of the atoms to be able to like measure the frequency and measure the like vibration of the atoms in order to be able to find out exactly what atom it is. The problem is that those devices are super expensive and they're big and they're based on special components and whatever. Well, with photoelectronics, a lot of this stuff becomes miniaturized, and you use the same technology used in order to make like microprocessors or the kind of things that go in your iPhone. And so what these guys have done is come up with a way to be able to do that, like at much smaller smaller sizes. And the smaller it gets, the more it relies on mass manufacturing, and the cheaper it gets.
Mhm.
And they're saying that we're just a couple of years away from being able to have something where you might be able to strap something on your arm, or at the very minimum, you'll be able to have some kind of a device at home where anytime you wanted to, you could go and just check to see what your, I don't know, pick some obscure hormone or metabolite in your body, go see what the levels are. And I think, I mean, sign me up. That's one of the first things I want to check out.
And
I
do
was
you
talking
see
to
these
somebody,
being really accurate? Do
oh,
you
I
do you
think they'll
see
be
these being
super
accurate
accurate.
enough
Yeah,
for
I
the
think they'll
normal
be super
person?
accurate. I think they'll be super accurate. Yeah. And once it becomes a consumer technology, then there are a lot of people that are working on making it be more and more accurate. But keep in mind also, like, accuracy, what you really care about is actionability. So
Hmm.
um, does it really matter whether you measured something to the nth decimal point, or does it really matter more whether it produces something that some result that you care about? And so, like for example, with this company, one of the things that I noticed was that the first couple times I did the test, it showed that my vitamin D levels were below normal, and I was able to show how just like taking supplements for a month, and my vitamin D levels went back to normal. But I tested it side by side with a vitamin D test from Quest. Now Quest, their vitamin D tests, I think, it's pretty expensive. It's like $100, I think, is the normal price, and
Hmm.
I think I got it at a discount for you might be able to get it like for $30 or something, but still, that's not something
Yeah.
you're going to want to test every single day. And with this other kind of technology, you literally can test your vitamin D, 5 times a day. It costs 25 cents each time, something like that. And even though when I did this, even though the actual number didn't um, wasn't the same as what I got from Quest, it was directionally the same. In other words, like on a day when it was low, Quest also said it was low, and then it went up, and Quest said it went up. So in that, like, that's an example of something where I didn't really care whether I was like the exact number that was on it. But what I care about is, am I improving? Am I change? Is it going in the right direction? And I think you're gonna find out that a lot of these tests give you that sort of power. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely, I see what you're saying about the actionability because it doesn't, yeah, the exact number doesn't matter, and most people don't care about the exact number, actually. I know you've
yeah,
done a
yeah,
ton of
yeah.
testing, and I'm super interested in a lot of the testing that you've done. I went and looked at your website and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your microbiome testing? Because that's something that I'm super interested in, and I know a ton of people
Okay.
are super interested in,
Yeah.
and like
Okay.
insight on what you learned from that.
Yeah. Have you done a microbiome test yourself yet, or you're still
I've
looking into,
never
or
done it myself, but I really
uh-huh,
want to, so that's why I'm
uh-huh.
really curious.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, so I got interested in this because I was interested in genetics. Again, like I'm thinking like a software guy trying to learn about my body's hardware, and I was thinking, well, we're all made up of genes, so I'd like to know more about genes. Problem with genes is that you can't change it. So you find out that you've got the gene for this or that. Well, too bad for you. It's like I said, it's not really actionable. And then I discovered that not only with the microbiome do you have more genes, so the microbial genes that are in and on us outnumber your human genes by hundreds of times. There's just a zillion of those kinds of genes out there, and but they affect every part of your health they're linked to allergies and things like diabetes and even like mental health, everything from OCD to Alzheimer's. I mean, all of those things are linked to different microbial populations. And it was originally, when you think about sequencing your microbiome, that seemed like an impossible problem because it was hard enough to sequence one person's genes. But imagine trying to sequence the trillion different microbes that you've got in your body. That's just completely impossible. Well, somebody figured out, this is probably, I don't know, maybe coming up on it probably 10 or 15 years ago, somebody figured out that it was possible to, they used this, it's kind of like cheating because what they found out is that if, that all bacteria share a particular gene that has evolved differently enough in the bacteria that if you kind of know which family of bacteria that you're talking about, all you need to do is sequence this one gene. You get a general idea of what the bacteria is, and so somebody put together a project where they figured out what all the common bacteria that are in humans, and then now they only need to look for just those bacteria and just those particular genes. So it brought up a problem that was normally like sequencing trillions of genetic letters, which would be just impossible, to sequencing maybe only a couple hundred. And so this presented the possibility of being able to make very cheap microbiome tests. And so starting about, I don't know, like it's probably now 7 or 8 years ago, I got involved because there was a Kickstarter project out of out of UCSF that it was somebody who already had one of these machines for his academic lab was going to rent it out and charge $99 to anybody who wanted to test it. Anyway, I just got super into it. And long story short, I ended up doing over 600 tests on myself of testing my microbiome. I tested it just about every day. I tested my gut, my skin, my nose, everything. And I had access to this machine, and so I was able to do tons and tons of testing. I got really, really into it, and I wrote my own software to do the analysis and everything else. And and a couple of things that I learned. I mean, it was fascinating. It was really, really special opportunity for me to find out all this stuff. But the kind of the biggest things I learned was that the microbiome does change a lot. So from day to day. So just like we were talking about blood testing, the afternoon is different than the evening. A lot of people get all worried because they do a microbiome test. They look at the diversity, which is one of the big things that people want to know about their microbiomes, and they find out that it's low, or they get really excited because they find out their diversity is high. And one of the things that I learned by testing every day was that if it's low on Monday, it might be high on Tuesday because there's just like that kind of variability. But that said, there are a lot of things that do stay the same over time, and so I spent a lot of time kind of trying to understand the differences and learning about what like how I would manipulate my microbiome and anyway I had a lot of fun. one of the most interesting things I did was I was I was interested in seeing what would happen if I completely eliminated my gut microbiome and started over from scratch. And so I was doing you know how like when you do like a colonoscopy, they make you drink this stuff that flushes everything out of your gut, and then and I was thinking, okay, well, I'll measure my microbiome every day uh, before and after and see how it changes. And the thing that I found out was that even if you flush your microbiome completely and you start over, within like 2 weeks, it's right back to where it was. So we each have like kind of or at least what I discovered myself is that we have a pretty resilient microbiome that doesn't change a whole lot. And that's good news if you're reasonably healthy, but it also explains a lot for why people who are you find themselves unhealthy, either because of allergies or maybe they've got some kind of like gut problem or some other kind of like chronic health problem. It can be really hard to change your microbiome because you're kind of stuck in one place, and shifting out of that is kind of complicated. But the good news is that it is possible. So unlike your genes, at least you can work with it. So, but I had a lot of fun with that, and I still test myself pretty regularly just to stay up on things.
And is that a test that you would recommend other people do? Do you think it's good actionable insight for most people, or just for
Oh, I
people
think
that are
so.
kind
Yeah,
of already
I think so.
unhealthy?
Here's my one of my suggestions about doing a microbiome test is um, if you, I mean, if at all possible, don't do just one test, do at least
Hmm.
two. So,
Okay.
because you're going to get different results, and the results are going to be different enough that you'll want to have at least two to compare. And so that's that's like the first thing that I recommend is try to get at least two tests, and you will learn a lot. The question is, how actionable it is depends a little bit on what your situation is and what you're trying to solve or what you're trying to like understand about yourself. But I think it's just a fascinating way to learn a lot of things.
Yeah. What are some actionable steps for people that are getting into their own personal health and wanting to start doing tests? Is there kind of like a guideline or a couple tests that you would recommend for people that were just starting to get into it to have more actionable
Oh,
steps?
well, I think that you should do the basics. So it's cheap enough these days, and a lot of this depends on your budget, but it's cheap enough these
Yeah.
days that you should definitely get us like one of the simple genetic tests. So something from like 23andMe, just to get an overall look at your genetics. Uh, I would do a microbiome test. Again, depending on what your health situation is like, you'll want to get, uh, definitely I'd say a gut microbiome test. You might also get like an oral microbiome test. And there are companies that make these things, and they're all like, 100, maybe $200 kind of thing. Um, and then I like doing blood tests. That's really useful. Like I said, there are companies now that will let you do either at home or really cheap. Uh, if you use something like Quest, there are several companies now that will sell you like the wholesale version of a Quest test. So you still go to the Quest lab and get it done by a professional phlebotomist, but the price will be a lot more reasonable. Um, yeah, and I'm always looking for other things to be able to test. Obviously, one of the easiest things to get started with is to get like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something, just to like measure your heart rate. One of the things that people do along with that is measuring something called heart rate variability, um, and that seems to correlate pretty well with disease and with like stress and things like that. So that's another thing that I would look into. And then finally, one of the big ones that a lot of people are interested in is sleep. So
Hmm.
tracking your sleep a little bit is another great way to get started and get to learn about things.
Yeah, that's super helpful because I know so many people are trying to get into this space, but it can be overwhelming because there's so much information. I think alongside of like food, personal testing,
Yeah,
anything in like the health and wellness space can be really overwhelming for people that have never been interested before and now are trying to work on their health. So I
yeah,
always
and
try to ask people what the best way to get into it is.
yeah, and my favorite thing of all, like all the different things that I've tried, the most interesting one is getting from a CGM, because a CGM
Hmm.
gives you like real-time feedback, and it's hard to describe until you've tried it how powerful and interesting that is. Because as you know, like within minutes after eating some food, you're going to see what the reaction is and how your body responds, and that's just so eye-opening to people. And things that they might have thought were really healthy or something you should do, you immediately start seeing what effect that has on your glucose levels. And I think that's a very powerful driver of behavior and getting to understand things about yourself. Um, like when I did, like the first thing that really, I don't know, drove home to me the power of the CGM stuff was I always thought oatmeal was really healthy. And people say that and again, this is like the house analogy of like worldwide house
Yeah.
prices. Everybody says that oatmeal is healthy. Well, why is it healthy? It's healthy because it's got fiber and it's natural ingredients, whatever. But when I watched what happened on my CGM, just eating a bowl of oatmeal, it was just very eye-opening that this thing really, it spikes my glucose like you wouldn't believe. And but just knowing that allowed me to take the next step, which is it turns out that in my case, if I take the oatmeal with a little bit of butter, it completely changed the situation. And now suddenly it's not going to be an unhealthy food. So now I discovered that for me at least, adding especially butter or some other kind of fat makes it suddenly now it's no longer like a dangerous glucose spike for me. And I think it's easy to find
It's
similar
interesting
kinds of
you
things
say
where you get
that
that immediate
because
feedback.
that was one of my first tests as well with the CGM that I was really surprised by the data. Um, I went to school for nutrition. I considered myself super well educated in the space. And then all of a sudden, yeah, I put on a CGM and I was like, oh, I'm eating a massive bowl of oatmeal every morning. And my glucose was going super high up. And then I was going and working out, which then would bring it
Oh
down.
yeah,
But then I would eat something really carby right after it. And I would be on just this
yeah,
and then I'd be like, oh, why am I at 11 a.m.? I'm getting up at 5 a.m., eating, going to the gym, getting to work, and then being like, oh, at 11 a.m., I'm exhausted. I'm so tired.
oh
And
yeah,
then all of a sudden, I was looking at my graphs and going, I'm like going from so high to so low very quickly. And then I found often that I had low blood glucose I'm not diabetic, but that I would sit in this low zone and then I would get very like hangry all the time.
yeah.
And just little changes with like adding protein and fat
Hmm.
and kind of timing my workout and my schedule and when I drink
Hmm.
coffee, those little things made
Hmm.
such a big difference in all day energy. Even
Hmm.
for someone that's relatively healthy, it's really, really great insight.
Yeah, and again, the best part is you don't have to wait. You get that feedback right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm looking forward to seeing, in a couple of years, we'll see the same kind of device that can measure things like your ketone levels or, there's a whole bunch of the metabolites, lactate. It'd be nice to know in real time, like, what's going on based on what you eat or what kind of activity you have. And that's going to just open up a whole bunch of new experiments for me, at least.
Is there anything else that's coming up that you think is going to be really exciting in the personal testing space outside of what we've talked about already? I know we've talked about a lot, but anything like that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, well, we haven't talked enough about AI, but that's one thing
Mm-hmm.
that I'm super excited about right now is, as you might have heard, the new versions of, GPT-4, and there's a new one that's coming from Google, and there's another company that is specializing in making large language models that work specifically on health-related things. And I'm sure you've heard that these things have already shown that they can pass the medical exam that
Mm-hmm.
people are required to pass before they can become doctors. And so, and if you played with one, you can ask it the most obscure medical kind of a question, and it gives a surprisingly good answer. And I'm looking forward to having that sort of power be in the hands of normal people, because now it'll make it so that I don't think it makes doctors unnecessary. In fact, it maybe make them more necessary, but it definitely makes it a lot easier for you to get a lot more detail about your own health condition. And if there's something in particular you're working on or you want to be a lot more personalized, it definitely helps that. So one of the things that I've been playing with is taking all of the data that I've accumulated, whether it's from a CGM or blood test or genetic results, microbiome results, take all of that stuff, and you can give the Chat GPT a lot of other, they call it context, to tell it all about like all the different aspects of my health. And you plug that in and then have it generate custom, dietary recommendations or other kind of lifestyle recommendations. And I'm real optimistic that's going to produce some real powerful like insights that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And the kind of things that normally before this AI stuff came along would require, maybe a team of doctors and you have to sit down with them and really go over stuff. And now I think it'll be possible to kind of whip that stuff out and it'll bring that technology to everybody. And I think that's one of the really cool things.
Do you find that it gives you very specific results all the time, or do you think it's a very like I've seen, at least with my experience, kind of messing around with ChatGPT and all of that, that you have to be really, really specific with your prompts? I think that's something that hopefully they'll work on as as it progresses. But at least for me, I've noticed like the specificity is very important. Have you seen that in
Yeah,
like your health
yeah, yeah.
data?
I think you're right. I think that there's an art to learning how to work with these things that
Hmm.
maybe is a little bit underappreciated. Because when you start out and you just ask any question, it gives a really sophisticated, confident sounding answer, and you look at it and you think, wow. And then then you'll quickly realize that every so often it's very confident and very wrong. and
Yeah.
but I use these the large language models all the time, and I guess what I've come to understand is it's not so much about taking that first answer as it is about getting an interaction with the with the system. So it gives me a dietary recommendation, for example, based on all this context that I was mentioning. But um, what I'll do is I'll kind of push it and I'll say, well, are you sure about such and such? Or I'll say, like it tells me to eat more asparagus, and I'll say, well, um, maybe I don't want to eat that much asparagus. Are you sure? And it like that. It's that interaction I think that's really helpful. And if nothing else, just having that kind of that large language model that you can bounce ideas off is so helpful because we can't all have a 3 hour long session with a very accomplished doctor or a nutritionist to get to the bottom of something if you're looking at some kind of health issue. And this makes it just so much easier for normal people to get access to a lot more information.
Yeah,
So
I totally see that. I think how I'm looking at it now, and this I think will change as it progresses, is similarly to how we use Google now, where you're gonna get you could get a multitude of answers and it's gonna give you one answer, but you have to dig through all those websites
yeah.
or all the pages that it's giving you until you're getting to what's the general, right? Okay, there's multiple websites. Why is this the answer? Why
Mm-hmm,
is it in multiple different sites?
mm-hmm,
Is
mm-hmm.
it from a good source? Because I think it's still not 100% accurate and it never will be, but it'll get more and more accurate, at least is what I think.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily about accuracy as it is about I don't know, like letting you be able to hone in on what it is that you really want to know. So,
Hmm.
for example, uh, if you've done any kind of PubMed, or you want to be able to look up medical research, and if you're a little bit more sophisticated than just Googling it, you'll soon find out that there are these, specialized websites like Google Scholar where you can ask it
Yeah.
questions to find out, various different academic studies that have been done on this or that. Well, if you don't happen to know the exact words that the academics use to describe that condition or to describe that problem, you're not going to end up with very useful search results. So like a very simple example would be um, like I was looking for information about the effect that diet has on cholesterol levels. If you type in to either a Google search or even one of these academic search engines, if you type in diet cholesterol levels or something like that, you'll get some answers, and you might be disappointed in what you get. But you might have to type in something like, instead of saying cholesterol, you might say lipid, lipoprotein,
Yeah.
or you might just not know that the that a lot of these things don't use the word diet. They use they'll use some other kind of concept to be able to describe kind of like what you and I both know. We know what it means, but it's just different words. And the nice thing about these large language models, they use what's called like these semantic vectors, where they're looking at kind of what like all the different combinations of things that kind of sort of mean the same thing, and you're able to do like more efficient searches that way. And that's what I think is really going to revolutionize things, because in the past, somebody who grew up or is used to just doing Google searches, again, you're thinking in terms of like specific words, where
Mhm.
now you'll be able to think in terms of specific concepts. And I think that's going to be, you're going to find a lot more useful information than we did before. So I'm really optimistic about that. Um,
It's all very exciting. All the new things coming out. I'm excited to get to play with all of this as it comes out and definitely
mhm,
learn more.
mhm.
Thank you for your time, Richard. If there's anything else you'd like to mention, where can people find you? That's a great one. Where can people find more
Oh,
information
the best
and
way
all
to
that?
look for me, I think, is just go to personalscience.com, and that's where I write up all my information about things that I've learned, and in particular, like again with a couple of friends of mine, we run this thing we call Personal Science Week. So every Thursday morning, if you subscribe, we'll give you a free update on all the things that we've learned about personal science that week, and that's probably the best way to reach people. You can also just I'm happy to talk to people who've got specific things that they're interested in. Just go to richardsprague.com, and you can learn more there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, great talking to you, Sophia. Good luck.